What's up, everybody? This is Mirouku from Outer Rim CCG. We're here today with a new deck list, or a deck that I come up with that I've been playtesting with, and it's been turning out some decent results. It's been a lot of fun, and for those of you that's been wanting a good Mando deck, I think this is a great place to start. I know Bo-Katan is where a lot of people go for that, Mando fun. I tried her. I didn't particularly like her. So what I've done is I've tried to take aspects of her list that I liked, added some things that I wanted in my list, and I'm gonna try it out with Sabine. Before we get further into the the deck, I want to give a big shout out to our first uh, Patreon member, uh, Matt M. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. I really do. And I hope you continue enjoying our content. For those of you that aren't Patreon supporters, I'll leave a link in the description below. If you like our content, please like and share, subscribe, follow us on our social media. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to start with the ground units and maybe some of the choices, like some of the reasoning why we picked the ones we did. First off, you have Sabine Wren. She's a 2/3 Mandalorian. Uh, One of the abilities she has is if you have more than 3 aspects among other units you control, she is not targetable for attack unless she somehow gains Sentinel. Also, on attack, she gets to do 1 damage to a defender or base. So that is very key, like if your opponent has shields or if they're at 1 health, she can deal that damage without killing herself. The next one is Clanran Rescuer. It's a 1/2. When played, you can give an experience token to a unit. It can be himself or it can be another one. Best case scenario, you get a 2/3 on turn 1. Worst case, you get a 1/2 and you get to give something else a experience token. Next is Follower of the Way. He certainly isn't my favorite Mandalorian. However, he is a 1/3. And while upgraded, he gets a +1/+1, which makes him a 2/4, which is awesome. Or at least that ability is to me. He works well with Clanman Rescuer, and he's also a good target for Security Complex, which is our base. He's one of the 2 key cards that I focused on whenever I decided to put Security Complex in. I'll get to the other one shortly. But, worst case scenario, he's a 2/4 on turn 1, and he kind of really helps with the presence of like really aggressive units because he's a bigger back end. So a lot of times he's going to 2-for-1, especially if I use the Security Complex on him, or if I pump him up with Clanman Rescuer. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with him. I find the 1/3 a little disappointing, but because of his ability, I can see why they wouldn't make him a little bit stronger. Next is Ketio Onyo. I know you'll notice that the difference here is instead of running a 3 of, I'm running a 2 of on her, and the biggest reason is I already have a unique with Sabine Wren, and for my turn 1, I don't want to sit here and draw, multiple copies of multiple uniques. Because when we get to the other cards in the deck, there's more uniques there as well. So in order to kind of shave off a little bit of the redundancy and the potential of drawing double, I did make a cut on her and another card, which is Razor Crest. and we'll get to those shortly. But Ketsuyo is a 3/2 with Saboteur. For those of you that don't know, Saboteur means that you can attack a unit with a shield, destroy the shield automatically, or ignore it, and you can also skip and go around a unit with Sentinel, which for control, that's a huge deal. They don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that when I'm playing control. But when she deals damage to a base, she can destroy or defeat an opponent's upgrade. So if there's a bounty, or they have a dark saber, or they have something that you do not want them to have, I mean, you can even be as simple as you take away a shield that you previously would have had to go through. The next one is Housecast Soldier. She's a 2/3 Saboteur, and there's not much else to her other than that. A lot of these Mandalorians will have a bigger backside than their attack, which really helps them stay alive during this matchups or during the match. Because a lot of times when they have a bigger defense or health, they're able to survive aggression a little bit easier. And if you'll notice, with all the 2-drops we have 14 turn 1 plays. The next one we have is Night Owl Skirmisher, 4/3 unit. She does have smuggle, but her smuggle cost is 5. So if you're, while you're playing this during your early turns, if you're pulling her, it's a great use of smuggle. I absolutely love that mechanic. I'm so glad that it's actually been introduced. It's unique. I am surprised. But Night Owl Skirmisher is a great target for early on resources and a late game body. I'm going to skip the space units for right now, and I'm going to go ahead and continue on to the ground. The next one I'm going to tell you is it's an absolute beast, completely slept on, but it's a brilliant card. And this was the other card that I was talking about is a great target for Security Complex as well. It is Casca Reeves, or Elizabeth Banks if you watch the show. 4-drop, 4/3, or 4/5, sorry. Upon attack, if she is upgraded, she can deal 2 damage to a ground unit, which is awesome. Like I said, I feel like this unit is completely slept on and is an absolute destructive unit. One of the playtests I had just last night actually, I dropped Casca, Security Complexed her. Next turn, I did Vampiress, Flamethrower, and Clanran Rescuer. And it was just insane. And I actually ended up following up with a Heroic Resolve shortly after and used it to finish the game. But with Vampiress Flamethrower on her, I was able to basically clear my opponent's board, which is how I was able to continuously keep putting stuff on her. And luckily I wasn't playing against a yellow player to where they had like Waylay or Cunning. But yeah, it was a great card and was very useful. The next one, by the way, Casca Reeves is a unique. That was kind of one of the things I was talking about earlier about there's a lot of uniques in this deck. So where I could shave room, that's where I did. That way I'm not having to toss so many cards. I mean, I know there's a lot of redundancy, so it's hard not to end up tossing or resourcing a few of your uniques. But if you do it too much, you kind of weaken your deck. But it's also the name of the game. So next we have the Armorer, 3/5, 5 drop. When played, you can give a shield token to up to 3 Mandalorians. It can include itself. I mean, again, if you're facing off against a really aggressive deck, this is one of those things that would help you stabilize, keep your units on the board while also wiping out your opponent's units. I know a lot of you guys are probably wondering, why am I talking about taking out my opponent's units? Because Sabine is normally an aggro deck, and I agree. However, with the way that the Sabine deck works is you're aggressive early on in the first couple turns. You kind of have a little small dip in the middle, and then you have a decent backside for the end game. You don't want the game going till 10, 11 turns, because if you're playing a control deck, most likely they will have more and better firepower. However, if you can stabilize and handle the early on aggression, you are going to be able to outvalue your aggro opponent. I will say it can take a beating really well against a Sabine green deck. However, it can also stabilize and beat that same aggression. The last ground unit we do have is the Mandalorian, and it also plays into the stabilizing. He's a heavy hitter. It's a 6-drop, 5/6. When played, you may heal all damage from a unit that costs 2 or less, which, keep in mind, there's 14 copies of, and give 2 shield tokens to it. So there is plenty of targets for this Mandalorian to use. He also has Sentinel. So ground-wise, once you make it to the 4th, 5th, 6th turn, you're looking at dropping some heavy hitters like Casca, Armor, Mandalorian. The next thing kind of plays into what I was talking about earlier about the early aggression. Concord Dawn Interceptors. 3-drop, 1/4, has Sentinel. The unit gains +2 attack if it is defending. So it becomes a 3/4 at that point. I've also added in disabling Fang Fighters. 3/2, when played, you can defeat an upgrade. Works just as well as Ketsuyo, except I don't have to hit a base to do it. And with this this meta, there's a lot of bounties running around. There's a lot of experience tokens. There's not as many shield tokens now that Luke has kind of been put into the grave. But there's still some of them out there, especially on the yellow side. The next one, and I just to reiterate, the reason why I put only 2 in here is because we already have a 3-drop space unit, and with us having so many 2-drop ground units, I didn't want to clog us up too much, considering we also still had a 3-drop ground unit and a 3-drop upgrade, which I'll get to shortly. So I prefer to have the additional and a little bit of extra protection with the Concord Dawn Interceptors, because that means I can take more damage and be able to survive a little bit longer compared to the Fang Fighter that only has 2 health. The next one is Razor Crest. It's a great card. Um, it's a 4-drop, 3/4. Has Restore 2, which, like I've been saying, that is one of the few items that actually will help us on the stabilizing. And also, when played, I can return an upgrade from my discard pile, graveyard, whatever you wish to call it, to my hand. If you've been paying attention or looking at the list while I've been discussing it, I have 10 upgrades, which, anytime a unit dies with an upgrade on it, that upgrade disappears. So when I play a Razor Crest, I potentially have 10 different targets, and all of them are really great. They're all good targets to have. The last one is Survivor's Gauntlet. It's a 4/6. When played or attacks, I may attach an upgrade on a unit to another eligible unit controlled by the same player. So I could potentially move around my upgrades, like experience tokens, shield tokens, my actual upgrades like um, the flamethrower, the armor, saber, heroic resolve. So it has a lot of uses, but I can also do it to my opponent's stuff as well. You know, if I have a unit that's weak or damaged, and I can remove one of their upgrades, their shield, their +1 counter, anything like that to another unit, and it could kill them, Survivor's Gauntlet could potentially work as a kill spell as well. Um, I haven't run into that situation too much, but I know it's a possibility. Wanted to give you guys that kind of idea. The next thing we're going to go into is the events. We don't run a whole lot of events simply because a lot of our plays are made through our units and the upgrades we have. But I'm trying to run this deck kind of a mid-range, and I want to be able to at least take out some of the threats that I have or that I'm seeing. So for the main board, I am running only 1 takedown, but I'm also running 2 Fell the Dragons. Takedown, I can defeat a unit with 5 or less HP. It's a great target, great use of this spot. However, because of so many things like Poe Dameron, Wrecker, Crate Dragon, a lot of those bigger, stronger units that's been coming out from set 2, I felt like Fell the Dragon would be a little bit better of a target to take up, but I also still wanted to keep at least 1 takedown into the main board, just in case. The last event that I'm playing is Rivals Fall, which is simple 6-drop, defeat a unit. Again, I wanted to try to at least run a little bit of all 3 of the big removals so that it can at least hit all the targets. But I didn't want to saturate my deck with a bunch of removal because it kind of lessens the importance of the rest of the deck, which is a lot of combat tricks, a lot of upgrades, and a lot of power-ups. But I just put enough in there to where, it would be helpful when I hit it. The next thing we're going to do is talk about the upgrades, which I'm actually pretty excited about. Heroic Resolve, that is actually the card that Bradley, who is the other half of this group, got to showcase. That was his card preview. Hoping we will eventually get there to where we can do it for our channel itself. But Heroic Resolve is a 1-drop. Um, attach it, or attach unit gains an action where you can defeat the upgrade and you get an additional power up off of it. It the it gives it a +1/+1. And the action costs 2. It's you defeat it, so they lose the +1/+1. But for the attack for this turn, it gets a +4 and gains Overwhelm. Um, and on another part, even though you're taking an action, it also says to attack with a unit. So basically, as soon as you do it, you get to attack with it. The next one is Mandalorian Armor. When played on a Mandalorian, it gives it a shield, and then naturally it gives it a +1/+3 to their stats. It's a 2-drop. It's a very good defensive item. It certainly helps in the early on for units that are a little bit weaker. Clamoring Rescuer, Sabine Wren, Follower of the Way, like several of these units that have a lower backside or they're just weaker in general, and it gives them the power up to be like a mid-game unit. The next one is actually my favorite upgrade. It's gonna sound crazy considering the last upgrade we have, but this one is actually my favorite. Vampirus Flamethrower. And the reason why this one is my favorite is because it is such a fun target for Casca Reeves. It's a 3-drop. It gives the unit +1/+1, and it says on attack, you may deal 3 damage divided as you choose among enemy ground units. With Casca Reeves attacking, she also deals an additional 2 damage. So before you ever even have to hit a unit, you can deal 5 damage to it with Casca Reeves' ability. You can do 5 damage to a unit you're not even attacking. So it's a 10-point spread for that one card. Casca would attack for 5, then the 2 damage from her, plus the 3 damage divided. So for your turn 5, you're dealing 10 damage, which could potentially wipe out your opponent's board, and it certainly has a higher chance of wiping out an aggro player's board. And that's actually exactly what I did the other night with Casca Reeves. And I run a 3 of both the armor and the flamethrower because of how much of a useful tool they are. Heroic Resolve is I only run 2 of because even though I think it's great, I would much rather out-survive my opponents. And the only time that I'm really going to be using the second ability of the Heroic Resolve is a finisher. The next card I have is the Darksaber. It's a 4-drop, and it can ignore the aspect penalty if you're attaching it to a Mandalorian. Obviously, all my targets are Mandalorians. However, I am running it as a 2 of instead of a 3 of because it is a 4-drop. I already have 8 other 4-drops within the deck, and even though the deck is aimed to be a mid-range, it is, that is a very heavy and unique, and if I don't have the units on the field, it does me no good. But it is also probably the most powerful upgrade. Well, it's definitely one of the most powerful upgrades in the game. And the reason why is because when you attack, you can give an experience token to each other friendly Mandalorian unit. It gives the unit that it has a +4/+3. So it is. I mean, it's an absolute banger of a card. Um, but I am only running a 2 of simply because it is a heavy equipment. And that is honestly the deck as a whole. The the sideboard, it's one I've been playing around with and testing. We have more Rivals Fall, and normally my targets for that would be decks on the heavier side, so they're a little bit slower, but they're ones that I need legit targets for. Like, Takedown has the clause on it about it. They have to have 5 or less health. Fell the Dragon can't hit leaders, and they have to be over a certain attack power. Rivals Fall just doesn't care. It hits whatever it needs to do, and that's why I have additional copies in the sideboard. And just to keep in mind, sideboards are going to depend heavily on the meta that you're expecting to face and the meta of your local or the big tournaments. So these are always interchangeable. That's kind of what makes them great. Um, but I am running 2 copies of Rival Fall. I'm also running an additional 2 copies of Takedown, simply because, again, if I don't need Rivals Fall or I don't need Fell the Dragon, I'll bring these in to help take care of the problems that is already that I'm facing. I am running Vigilance. It's one of my favorite cards in the game, and honestly, it's really good. Especially, I mean, it hits so many targets. It can be a kill spell. You can mill out your opponent. A lot of times, I'm actually using it for this match, and probably the only time I've ever used this part of the card is giving shield tokens. Honestly, it's just a great target to give a shield token, kill a unit, and right off the bat, this one card is allowing me to kill one, make it harder for them to kill my unit, and allow my unit to be able to deal a damage or take out a unit without having to worry about getting killed. It also heals 5 damage, which is another really good thing, and one thing that I've used it for as well, especially if, at the end of all the fighting and the battling and the attacks, if I'm running low on health, but I have been able to stabilize the board, I'll use that to heal and get myself out of being in danger so that I can continue my advance. One of the other cards I put in is This Is the Way. And the reason why I've put this in the card is if I am facing much harder control, I'll use this so that I can look for the key cards that I need, considering most of the units and most of the spells in the deck are Mandalorian. With the exception of 6 cards, it will hit everything else in the deck. And that's if I'm facing really hard control, that's one of the cards I'm bringing in because I want to be able to find specific cards that I need. And the last card is kind of a surprising one, but it's worked out really well, and it kind of serves the same purpose as the Vigilance, as I said. If I'm able to make it to the later games against like a mid-range opponent, I wouldn't necessarily bring this in against an aggro, unless it's a specific aggro. There's certain, I guess you couldn't say aggro, but maybe like a little tempo, to where if you bring these in, you're going to survive the early aggression, but if you land this, you can heal, and you have a big body in the air. It can change the outcome of your game, and that's why I'm running Redemption. It's the highest cost in both decks, but it works against specific decks, which is what the point of a sideboard card is. Um, I will say this: this deck did phenomenal against the Mandalorian Tempo deck, which um, it just I feel like it just outvalued it. Yes, I was facing down Mace Windu. I was facing down, or not Mace Windu, Luke Skywalker, uh, Obi-Wan, things like that. I was able to get through a lot of the shields, the Sentinel stuff. By the time they were dropping Luke's, my units were upgraded enough to where the -6/-6 didn't hit vital units. And then following it up with a Fell the Dragon or a Rival's Fall was hilarious. Um, it does struggle against Sabine Green. Uh, just Poe Dameron and Wrecker are just really rough to deal with. They gave Sabine some amazing tools this set, and if anyone's been playing this, you know that's no different. Um, but to me, this has been a really great and fun deck. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and it's been getting a lot of laughs because of the crazy amount of upgrades and the abilities to keep putting those there. But if any of you guys have any suggestions or any different ideas, anything that you might suggest could go into the deck, let me know and I'll look into it. Um, but anyways, that is the full deck amount, or that is the complete deck. Um, like I said, if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. If you like this kind of content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, join us on our Patreon. We have a Discord, and you guys are welcome to sign up, come say hi, and hopefully, you know, we get to play sometime. All right, take care.